So this just showed up right here. This is a new to me enlarger that I picked up so I could start finally doing some darkroom printing here at home. This is something that I haven't done for, I would say, almost 20 years now. I did it for a very brief period of time back when I was in film school during a photography course then, but it is something that I've wanted to start doing here at home. So over the past couple of days, I sourced out kind of a kit and all the pieces that I'll need, and the plan today is to make a couple of prints, my first print in the past 20 years, and wanted to make this video just to share this experience and this process with you. And I'm sure it'll be interesting because I remember very little, so lots to learn, which is part of the fun. So the kit I bought came with a few things that were important to me. Obviously the enlarger itself. The model I ended up with is an LPL 7700, and this can do all the way up to 6x7, which is important for me because that's most of what I shoot in medium format. And then this is a color enlarger. It can obviously do black and white as well, which I'm going to start with, but I like the idea of just having this flexibility. I can grow into it. I can maybe start doing color here in a couple of months once I kind of get my workflow down. So that's what sold me on this. I would have loved to go for a 4x5 enlarger, but obviously the cost gets pretty high, and then I have like zero space here in the office as is. I had to shuffle and move a bunch of things just to set this up. But then it came with two lenses, so it has a 50mm Nikon right here, which you'd use for 35mm, and then it has an 80mm 5.6 Rodin stock mounted, which I'm hoping is going to cover for 6x7. I've heard mixed results. Some people say you need a 90, some people say you need a 105. We'll see. So fingers crossed today that that's going to work. But it also came with this universal negative carrier. So it has these adjustable masks, these bars on the side. So you can do a whole bunch of different formats, even potentially X-Pan, all the way up to 6x7 here, which is nice, just having the one and not having to go and source out a bunch of different masks for different film sizes. And then the last thing is this timer here, which is obviously important as well. And this is already wired in, which is nice. So that was a big appeal to me with this kit. You know, getting two lenses, getting the universal carrier, getting a timer, and obviously the enlarger. And for all of this, I paid £279. I didn't think that was too bad. You can find medium format enlargers for cheaper than this, but just keep in mind, a lot of times they only go up to 6x6. So if you shoot 6x7, just make sure you check specifics. And then there were just a few other things that I needed. I already have trays and tongs and a safe light from the paper negative video that I did, but I needed a focus checker, this one right here, and a paper easel. And these two things I got as part of a kit off of Facebook Marketplace. I paid £50 for these two things, and also an enlarger and a lens and a whole bunch of other accessories. And then the last thing is just some paper. So I have some Ilford multi-grade RC. I actually bought this ages ago, 8x10 size, when I was originally planning on doing this. So this has just been sitting. And then have some multi-grade developer stop bath and rapid fix from Ilford that I use to develop film, the stop and the fix at least. So that kind of rounds out the kit, but I think, yeah, time to get started. Okay, so I think I'm going to start with this image right here. This is a favorite of mine. This is 6x7 HP5 Plus, and this was an old abandoned chapel in Wales with the kind of interior. This will actually be really interesting because super high contrast. You have these bright windows, these deep shadows and stuff. So yeah, be curious to see how this one prints. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we're going to turn this on, and I actually had to pull the negative carrier out because this was reversed. I had the film in the wrong way. Like I said, lots to learn, but I'm going to go ahead and drop the head down a little bit here, make this a bit smaller. Something like that. And I think I'll move these masks in a bit just to get rid of those little bits of the film border. As much as I'd love to keep them in there, I can't get them on every edge, so I'm gonna choose to remove them for this one. That looks pretty good to me. And then I'll just grab this focus scope here and we'll focus this. But let's see here if I can find a spot. So that looks pretty good to me, and we'll focus this now. Cool, happy with that. All right, so focus is set. We're gonna make our first print here in a second, but the only other thing I wanted to mention, I'm gonna share whatever little bits of information I've picked up as I've done my research, but like I said, the paper I'm using is multi-grade paper from Ilford, and what that is a type of paper where you can kind of alter the contrast of the image using filters. You could make it more contrasty or less contrasty using these Ilford multi-grade filters right here. And what these are basically just these little gelatin color filters. You would take one of these, you would put it in a drawer on specific enlargers, and a certain color will decrease contrast, certain color will increase it. But what's nice with the color head is you can mimic those filters using the different colors, and Ilford actually publishes like a data sheet on their website for specific enlargers where they tell you what to add to increase or decrease. So on this one, as an example, we're going to start out today at grade 2, which is what was recommended when I did some research, and for that it's just everything zeroed out, pure white light, and kind of go from there. Keep it simple to start. So first sheet of paper is going to go in. We're going to do 4 different exposures on it to check exposure. We'll do 3, 6, 9, and 12. Develop that sheet and then go from there. And it's worth mentioning for anyone new to this, the reason you go and make this initial test print that has, say in this case, 4 different exposure zones is so that you can figure out what the best exposure time is for your first print. And after the print was exposed, it was into the bathroom, 1 minute in the tray for develop, 30 seconds for stop bath, and a minute for fix. And the result was an initial test print that was incredibly dark, even in the short times, and I realized right away that I made a pretty big mistake. Okay, so amateur hour here. Like I said, I'm just gonna share it all with you. What I just actually realized is I hadn't stopped my lens down. Had the lens wide open from focusing, and I didn't stop down afterwards. So I've just stopped down. That was probably why the exposure time was so short. So I'm gonna do one more here. I think I'll just do another test one for the sake of it. So we're gonna set the timer back to 3, and we'll do another here. All part of the process. Bound to make mistakes. Okay, so next print is drying. Already a huge difference with this one. So this would be 3, 6, 9, 12. Like I said earlier, very high contrast scene. So to me, this is obviously way short. Need much longer exposure time. I want to go somewhere in between these two, the 6 and the 9. This one might be getting a little bit too dark here for the shadow detail. So maybe it's something around like 7 or 8, and then potentially doing another one where I dial back some of the contrast using filtration. But we'll see. Maybe I'll go 8 seconds. I do really like how this looks here with the kind of side / backlighting, how it turned out here, but 12 is too much. So maybe I'll go 8 and we'll see how that looks. So back to the video in a second, just have to quickly talk about the sponsor today, which is Squarespace. So I've been using Squarespace for a number of years now, and what I love is how easy it is to build a clean, professional looking website for your photography that can grow with you. And to do this, you can use one of their pre-made templates, or you can use something like their blueprint builder, which allows you to build your site from scratch, but gives you really helpful tools like different page layouts, color palettes, and font pairings. It's also really easy to add, customize, and tweak your website. As an example, if I want to make a new gallery, I can simply click and drag to upload images and also to reorder them. But it's also great if you want to do more advanced things like, say, add an online shop. And at the start of this year, I decided to offer some limited prints for sale, and Squarespace made the entire process very streamlined, from setting up a shop page to payment processing and fulfillment. So check out squarespace.com today, sign up for a free trial, test it out, and when you're ready to launch, you can use my link below to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Okay, 8 seconds. So cool seeing the full print come up. Just looking a bit dark, which I don't necessarily mind. I do want it a bit darker, but just I want to make sure we have detail in those shadow areas too. So it's a process. I can see how people get really addicted to this because it's pretty fun. This is the first print, so this was 8 seconds, and it is starting to look pretty good. I want the scene to be dark, but not enough detail here in the shadows. And then these highlights are pretty bright. Obviously, there's going to be some give and take here because it is a high contrast scene, but I think I'm going to shorten my exposure. Might go for something maybe around 6.5 seconds and roll with that. But it is cool to see this print come to life, I must say. So I actually decided why not just dive right into things, and for the next print I ended up cutting out cardboard templates so I could do some burning in the window areas. So I'm going to do 6.5 seconds. And now these windows. Another 5. Wish me luck. See what happens. Okay, so honestly, I'm too anxious to wait for this to dry completely. I'll probably end up making another one as well, but this is the second full print. This was the 6.5 seconds, and figured why not just go for some dodging and burning at the same time. So made a little cardboard template and tried to bring some more detail into those windows, and I might even go a little harder on it, but I'll show you here, bring the camera in a little closer. So this is the print here, and I'm actually really happy with how this looks. You know, a little bit extra detail maybe here. I might make one more and see if I can shorten the time, bring a bit more out here. But yeah, that extra exposure time here in the windows with the mask definitely helped bring some detail in there. So yeah, I can see the fun already of doing that, of making, you know, these cutouts and playing with different exposure times throughout. It's a lot of fun, but you know, for a second full print, this one actually looks pretty nice, but we'll see. I might make one after with a little extra time. See if I can bring anything else out in there. So I ended up making 3 more versions of this test print and just experimenting, doing some dodging in the deep shadow areas and then going and doing some longer exposure burning in the windows. And I got really close to where I want to be, but also made a few other mistakes along the way, which is obviously to be expected, but overall it was just fun to start to learn this process. And over the next day I ended up taking a couple other negatives of mine, 2 in particular from my Slate City series, which are favorites, and I made a couple more prints with those. And again, maybe not exactly where I want to be with these final results, but pretty happy with the outcome for my first time doing this in quite a while. And I wanted to just spend a little bit of time here at the desk in the office now, going over these prints that I made, just showing you the changes that I made, what worked, what didn't, and kind of the final point that I got to. So I'm going to throw the camera overhead. We'll take a closer look at all of these, and then we'll wrap things up. All right, so we'll start with this first scene here. So this is the very first print I made after the tests, and this one here is too dark. Like I said, I think this was 8 seconds. Yep. So a little bit too dark, you know, lacking detail here in the shadow areas. So I went and made another one at 6.5 seconds, and this is the one where I went and burned the windows for 5 seconds as well. And this is actually pretty close. I'm fairly happy with how this looks. It's just I wanted a little bit more detail in the shadow areas here. So I left my exposure at 6.5, and I went and I decided to dodge this area a little bit. For about 1.5 seconds during that initial exposure to pull some more shadow detail in. And then I burned the windows again, but I increased that to about 8 seconds. But you can see my technique with burning, since I probably shouldn't have made such a defined cutout in the cardboard, because you can see I was sliding it over the interior wall here a little bit as I was moving it around, and it just created this really hard kind of dark area here on the wall. Obviously burning part of the wall, which I don't want. So yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like over time refining technique, which is to be expected. But that's one of the mistakes that stood out. So I went and did this again. And what was funny on this one is the burn in the windows actually looks pretty good. But when I was dodging at the start, I actually forgot almost forgot I needed to take that out during the initial exposure. So I think for a 6.5-second exposure, I dodged this area or held back light for like 5 seconds. So it just, it looks like a cardboard square. So obviously that didn't work, which is a shame because the windows look really good. So I went back and did one more here. And I would say this is the closest to a final print. Love how this turned out, 6.5 seconds. Love the shadows or shadow detail you can see here now, but you can see in the wind or right on the edge of the window, just with that, you know, hard edged cardboard template. You have this black line here. So obviously that is not the way to approach this, but I think in the future I'd just cut like a, you know, a rough circle that's small and with some movement, burn the windows that way, rather than having this like perfect cutout. But this is pretty close, and I will say that I'm pretty happy with this. So I'll do another one at some point. For the sake of finishing this video, I stopped at this one. But like I said, I did do 2 other images. So this is the first one. This is an image from my Slate City project, and made a test print, 3, 6, 9, 12 again. You can see my sectioning is hilarious. Need to improve that as well. But I knew I wanted to be somewhere in between 6 and 9. So the first one I did, I went for 8 seconds. And this one's a bit too dark, I knew right away. So what I did is I cut it back to 6.5 seconds, which I really like. And then I also dialed in 25 on the magenta wheel, which bumped me up to grade 3 for a little more contrast. So this is 6.5 seconds, grade 3. And with no dodging and burning, I'm actually pretty happy with how this one looks. So that was fun. And then I decided to do one more quickly, another image from Slate City. And what's interesting is for this one, I didn't do a test print just because I was able to guess fairly close based off of that last image. The negatives were quite similar. So for this one, I went 6.5, which kind of got me in the ballpark. It's a little bit too light in the foreground. So I went for, I think, 8.5 seconds for this one, which I was really happy with, but you can see these marks here. This is me putting my gloves, which were wet, on the paper as I slide it into the easel, which is, again, just another rookie mistake. So yeah, refinement of the process will be key next. So I went and made one more, obviously handled the paper a little better this time, but this one is 8.5 seconds, and yeah, really happy with this. Okay, so overall, like I said, just had a ton of fun doing this, and yeah, really glad I kind of put together a kit and started this process. And you know, I have a ton to learn. I would say that, like when you start anything new, the process felt like pretty sloppy and clunky, even though I was able to make prints and you know, get things that I was pretty happy with. You could just see like a lack of confidence in my approach, and obviously like paper isn't being aligned, and I'm, you know, putting my hand on the paper as I'm sliding it in and getting these marks, and just also, you know, my approach to dodging and burning and stuff like that. So I certainly can see areas that I'll make changes moving forward, but kind of like with anything, you know, the more you do it, kind of the more confident you get, and you start to build your workflow. But I mean, regardless, really fun just to make some prints without any computer involved, you know, just taking the film negative, using the enlarger, and yeah, making some nice darkroom prints. So had a lot of fun with this, and excited to expand on it moving forward. Also to jump into some color at some point, that'll be interesting. But that's going to wrap this one up. Hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.